Centro La Familia Advocacy Service provides a broad range of services to unserved and underserved residents in Fresno County in more than a dozen different communities, including victims, services for those who have suffered domestic violence, sexual assault, or human trafficking. Also joining us will be Kings County District Attorney Keith Fagundes and Julia Patino, Victim Witness Program Coordinator, who will share services available to victims of these heinous crimes and their experiences in catching and prosecuting human traffickers. Let's first start with a staff from Centro La Familia, and then we'll have the DA and Julia follow. So it is my honor to welcome to this webinar Mario Gonzalez, Deputy Director of Centro La Familia Advocacy Services. And then, of course, next is Kings County DA Keith Fagundes and Julia Patino. Thank you for joining us today and for providing such vital information for the people of the Senate District 14.
Good afternoon, Senator Hurtado and everyone on the call today. Thank you for taking the time to give us this opportunity to present a little bit about human trafficking, the services we provide, and how you as an individual who is listening in can take some action to ensure that if you see something that doesn't seem right, that doesn't seem appropriate, that you know how to report it and who to report it to. We're going to go over a series of different items and just kind of give you a background and updates on what human trafficking is, what it looks like, and how to spot it if you see it, and what to do and what not to do if you do encounter it. So I'm going to be sharing my screen and then walking through some points and kind of sharing with you who is Centro La Familia if you're not familiar with this. So I hope you can see my screen now. My name is Mario Gonzalez. I'm the Deputy Director with Centro La Familia Advocacy Services. My background is in law. I received my bachelor's degree from Fresno Pacific in pre-law and criminal justice and my law degree from San Joaquin College of Law. I am not an attorney. However, I do practice immigration law. I am an OLAP, Office of Legal Access Program, accredited representative. So although I am not an attorney, I do practice immigration law and assist families with applying for immigration relief, specifically through humanitarian visas, which I'll cover in my presentation. These visas are intended to assist victims and survivors of human trafficking and other serious crimes apply for and obtain protection from deportation. So I'll cover those services through the work that we do. But first and foremost, before I begin, I'd like to share with you who we are as an organization. Centro La Familia has been around for 50 years. This marks our 50th year as an organization serving our community. We began in 1972 as a community-based organization with the goal of serving those in need. A group of students were asked by a professor at the community college to go out into the community and to try to make a difference in the community. What these students realized was that people were being turned away when they were applying for public benefits like food stamps, cash aid, Medi-Cal. When they were trying to obtain these benefits to sustain their lives, really. And so from there, we began to expand our services and grow our organization to ensure we were always available to our families in our community. Our organization has several departments that focus on providing an array of different services from policy and leadership, family strengthening, health and wellness, immigration services, and victim services. Today, I'll focus primarily on our victim services department as we are covering the topic of human trafficking. So what is human trafficking? Human trafficking did not exist as a rule or law until 2000. However, human trafficking, the federal law defines human trafficking as sex trafficking in which a commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such an act has not attained 18 years of age. What that means is that if a minor is being used for the commercial sex act, it is immediately human trafficking, regardless of whether it was force, fraud, or coercion, because in the state of California and in any state, really, a minor cannot consent legally. Additionally, for labor trafficking, the recruitment, harboring, transportation, or provision or obtaining of a person for labor or services to the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of the subjugation to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt bondage, or slavery. The source is there if you'd like to look it up for yourself. And we'll make these slides available after through Senator Hurtado's office. So in essence, this is the breakdown of what sex trafficking and labor trafficking is. There is a slight variation of the focus of it, although both can be muddled sometimes. And when we're working with clients, we can see a little bit of both sex trafficking and labor trafficking when identifying victims and trying to rescue them from the perpetrators. However, there is the major difference that if a person under the age of 18 is being used for a commercial sex act, it is immediately sex trafficking, regardless of whether or not there was any force, fraud, or coercion. Other than that, there has to be, if they are 18 and over, there has to be a form of force, fraud, or coercion to be able to identify a victim as a victim of human trafficking. It is usually done through the AMP model, the action means purpose model. Again, if a minor is induced into commercial sex trafficking, they are considered a victim irrespective of the means. An action could be through inducement, through recruitment, through providing someone, to obtaining someone, harboring or transporting someone. There has to be some kind of force, fraud, or coercion. That's the means. And the model, the purpose would be for labor or commercial sex. And that's how, that's a small way, the easy way to kind of remember what human trafficking might look like if you are not so certain as to how to define it or how to identify human trafficking in your community or in a work relationship that you're noticing or seeing. If there's any kind of, any one of these two, and it could equal labor trafficking or commercial sex trafficking. Some of the things to look out for when you are potentially identifying a victim or survivor of human trafficking is whether or not they have access to their personal documents. What that means is that does the trafficker keep identification documents from them? The trafficker take away their passports, take away their ID, take away any form of identification, because you know that if you were to go out and try and report something to law enforcement, try to communicate with law enforcement, the first thing they ask you for is your identification. They always ask to ID you first before they'll talk to you or get your information. They ask you for your ID. And so traffickers are very smart about that. And they know that if they keep these documents away from the victim is willing to report to law enforcement. So one thing, if the trafficker is keeping the documents, then that's a major red flag. You know, why are they keeping the documents? This could include travel documents. It could include vital documents like birth certificates, any other form of identification. And if their freedom is restricted for movement and opportunity, if they're not allowed to seek other job opportunities, if they're not allowed to go to the store on their own, if they're not allowed to go to a doctor or call a doctor or set up an appointment on their own, that could be a form of control. If they don't have access to their own medical records, that could be a form of control, way for the trafficker to prevent the victim from obtaining the needed support that they need. Their safety. If the trafficker threatens with harm to the individual or to the family, a lot of times the trafficker is familiar with that individual's family, so they might threaten to hurt their kids if they have any, threaten to hurt their parents if they're still alive, their brothers, sisters, their siblings. They'll create a threat and try and impose that threat on the victim, reminding them that, hey, I know you are from, say, for example, Tijuana. You're from Tijuana. I know where you live. I know where your family lives. I went to pick you up. So if you don't do what I say, I'm gonna go back there and I'm gonna hurt your family. I'm gonna, kill them. I'm gonna threaten them. I'm gonna take away their livelihood, whatever the case might be, whatever the threat might be. It usually is death to the family and or serious bodily injury. Additionally, there is potential physical harm that is caused to the victim to ensure that they are docile and they're compliant. If the victim has bruises or signs of physical abuse or bruises that never seem to go away, A lot of the times, abusers will hit the person in the same location to make it seem that it's the same bruise that's happening. But if you see different forms of discoloration, so different levels of discoloration, where it goes from black to blue to green, it could be that they're just being bruised in the same location. And we've seen that on several occasions where the person continues to be harmed and hurt in the same space, so that the bruise seems like it just doesn't go away. Or lastly, if the person is threatened with deportation or arrest, if the trafficker continues to threaten the individual and just claim that if they were to flee, if they were to run away from the trafficker, they'll call immigration on them, that they'll call the police on them to get them arrested. That's ways of forcing the individual to stay, to be compliant with the trafficker. Next is freedom. Defers to another to speak for them. So if they're at a doctor's visit, if they're at a county office, a state office, and the victim's not allowed to speak, the trafficker is answering all the questions and not allowing them to answer. Or if you ask them a question directly and they look to the trafficker and just wait for them to respond. I mean, most people would respond for themselves. It's very unlikely that they wouldn't. So that could be a red flag. That's something you look out for. Next, if the victim has a well-rehearsed story for law enforcement, if they have a story that they repeat over and over again, like they've been practicing it, that could be a red flag for, why are they having a story? Why do they have a story that they're repeating over and over again? Or if they're not allowed to socialize with others or to attend any events, if they can't attend any family events, birthday parties, if they're not allowed to socialize with others, if their social media is limited, if they're not allowed to call, to text, to communicate with others, that could be a red flag. The next is the work and living conditions. If they're doing a different job than they were promised or they expected to do, say, for example, they were promised to come up and work at a restaurant, but instead they're forcing them to work in the field, or forcing them to work at a bar selling beer, or trying to get patrons to buy additional beers or to dance with the patrons. That could be, a huge red flag. If they are being deprived of water, food, sleep, or medical care because the trafficker is trying to ensure control over them, if they're not allowing them to purchase their own food, if they're not allowing them to seek out medical care because they were hurt on the job, or they got caught, or they got a cut and it's becoming infected. Like, why did it become infected? Why didn't they seek out medical care? With somebody controlling them, those are huge red flags. And if a minor is engaged in commercial sex act, immediately we know that's human trafficking, because a minor cannot consent to sex. The wages, what red flags to look for under wages, if they don't control their own money. If the trafficker has full control of their income and they don't decide how their money is spent, as soon as their check comes in, as soon as they get paid, the trafficker decides how much they're paying for rent, how much they're paying for food, how much they're paying for transportation, how much they're being paid for, they're paying for being taken care of, all those things. If the person does not have an ability to control how they use their money, then that's a huge red flag, because we all work and/or have some form of income, and we decide what we would do with that income when we work. If I get $1,000, if I get $500, I decide what bills I'm going to pay. But if I can't control my own money and someone's controlling it for me without my permission, and it's forcing me to pay out whatever they decide I need to pay out, then that's a huge red flag. If they're paid less than promised or not paid at all, again, if the trafficker is controlling their monetary income and they're deciding whether or not to pay them, that could be a red flag. Or if often they have to work to receive any pay. So they'll have to work more than what's expected to receive that form of pay. Those are red flags to look out for that could identify that a victim is being trafficked. And not all the cases. Sometimes it could be a labor issue or Kalosha issue. But if it's a red flag, it's better to report it than to leave that person in doubt and continue to be trafficked. In 2017, these are a little updated numbers, but I wanted to show you kind of how prevalent it is in our community. These are numbers for Fresno County. In 2017, we received almost 4,000 calls as a community. The National Human Trafficking Hotline received over 4,000 calls for our community. 1,305 cases were reported for this year. There's high indicators that show that a lot of the victim survivors were the ones themselves calling, trying to look for services. Majority of cases were sex trafficking, just because it's more prevalent and more easy to identify than labor trafficking is. And the majority of victims were female and adult in nature. And the majority of victims were U.S. citizens, individuals who had lawful status in this country, other people who called. Although it does happen to foreign nationals, it happens a lot more often to U.S. citizens who are living here in this country. This image here kind of highlights some of the hot spots. And I know it's hot red in a lot of areas, but if you look at it, it's around the big cities, Fresno, the 99 corridor. So if you look up this, the line that's going up and down, it is the 99 corridor up to I-5. That's the corridor that traffickers use to transport victims up and down California and up into Oregon and over to Las Vegas, Nevada. The Reno area, the big cities, is where it's happening. Down in Phoenix, the big cities where you can move people around easily and kind of hide them and use it as a way to keep the victim not knowing where they're at and moving them constantly to ensure that the trafficker has control over those victims. Some of the reasons why a person might be vulnerable and why some youth might be more vulnerable than others. Obviously, the young age comes into play because if they're young, they're very susceptible and can be led into agreeing to something they're not comfortable for. If they have limited education, they don't know the rights. If they lack other work opportunities, maybe they have a history in the juvenile hall, or they don't have any other vocational training, other training that allows them to seek out work. Then they might be forced into agreeing to some form of labor trafficking or sex trafficking. If they lack any family support and no one to fall back on, then obviously they would be forced, or they could easily be forced to fall in love or to agree to a trafficker's term, because it would be some form of security, or at least they would see it that way. And if they live in an environment where trafficking occurs, and I just showed you in the previous image, trafficking is occurring all over our communities, although we don't see it as often because it's a hidden crime for a lot of times. It is happening in our community, and it is very frequent in our community. So we know that if our victims live in environments where trafficking occurs, it's most likely to occur. And we know that our community is in a community where it is occurring. If they live in poverty or are refugees, or if there's a past history of being sexually abused, or if they have a criminal history, because a person with a criminal history is less likely to be able to find a gainful employment, because a lot of employers are not willing to take risks hiring an individual with a criminal history. So they're more likely to fall into either sex trafficking or labor trafficking, where the trafficker will take advantage of them because of this, pay them less, and force them to pay out or control their wages to limit how they expend their money. The reasons why we have so much human trafficking it's not necessarily the supply side, but the demand side. There's a high demand for commercial sex or inexpensive workers. Everyone's always clamoring for the need for more commercial sex or more inexpensive workers. So the demand is really what drives it. There's a lot of political instability or civil unrest and war in a lot of countries around the world, and so people are convinced to come to the United States for a better life, and then forced into a life of being trafficked and being a victim. There could be political or police corruption in their own communities. There's a growth of organized crime, and really the growth of organized crime is really what's caused trafficking to become a bigger part of the criminal underworld, because traffickers have learned, and organized crime has learned, that although they can make money by selling drugs and selling guns, they only make that income once. Once they sell that gun, once they sell that that pound of drugs, it is gone. However, a human being you can force to work, you can force to provide commercial sex acts over and over again. And that's continued income for the organization, the criminal organization. And so that's really a huge part of why human trafficking has become one of the largest forms of crimes and criminal enterprises in the around the world. Then additionally, there's lack of adequate law enforcement, legal and community protections that exist in their countries of origin. We know here in the U.S., and I'm sure DA Keith will share more about the work that they do, but there's a lot more protections in our community, and I'm going to talk about those in a little bit, but there's a lot more protections and forms of assistance for victims in the U.S. that don't exist in other countries. I'm going to skip that one real quick. These are some of the things that our victims we've noticed need when we're rescuing them from the life of trafficking. They have basic needs such as things that we might take for granted, like toothpaste, bath towels, things that we take for granted immediately. They have a need for safety, physical health, mental health. They might have a substance abuse problem that was forced upon them by the trafficker. They lack housing. They might have legal issues that they need to resolve or immigration needs that they need assistance with. If they are from a foreign country, they'll need cultural integration. We want to make sure we focus on cultural integration and not assimilation, because we want them to be and keep their own identities and not force them to assimilate to a country that's different from their own, but rather to acculturate and become familiar while keeping their culture and keeping their identity. Because if we force them to assimilate, we are taking away from them their own personas, their own personalities, and again, continuing to abuse their individualities. And a lot of the times they lack education. So we really want to make sure that we provide them with access to any and all of these through assisting our victims of human trafficking. And we are only one of 47 different collaborative task force in California. The Central Valley Against Human Trafficking Task Force is the one we all pertain to here in the Central Valley. And we work with several nonprofit organizations in our community and with all of our law enforcement entities here in Central Valley, ensuring that we co-share and co-educate one another on the different resources and services that continue to exist in our community. I'm going to talk quickly about our victim services. I know we have limited time, but I wanted to share with you how we help our community here in Centro La Familia in the Central Valley. We can assist families with our victim services through intervention, prevention, outreach, education, and we assist victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and other serious crimes. If a victim is a victim of human trafficking, they can live anywhere in the Central Valley, and we'll be willing and able to assist them throughout Central Valley. We assist them with applying for restraining orders. They might need a civil harassment restraining order or domestic violence restraining order. We'll assist them through the process, which can take up to 90 days, sometimes a little bit longer. But what these do is they ensure protection from the abuser. Although it is documented, it provides legal protections for that victim to ensure that they're protected from their abuser, and that the abuser can continue to harass them, stalk them, call them, message them. Any form of communication will terminate with the restraining order, or should terminate. And any communication after the restraining order is a violation of that order, and law enforcement will help us then ensure that the order is enforced. We also assist victims with applying for humanitarian relief. If a person is here undocumented or they lost their status, we can assist them with applying for immigration relief. This can take anywhere from 90 days to begin the process, up to 15 years to obtain some kind of lawful remedy. There are different forms of immigration relief. The first one is a T visa, and these are non-immigrant status visas. What that means is that the individual, once they get this and get granted this visa, they can't travel outside the country. In essence, it allows them to stay in the country for a period of up to 4 years. And after the third year, they can apply for lawful permanent residence or a green card. What the T visa does for a victim of human trafficking, if they report it to law enforcement, they can apply for humanitarian relief for a T visa. And there's a limit of 5,000 visas each year. And so each year, up to 5,000 individuals who are victims of human trafficking can apply. There is no wait list for this currently. So it is currently taking anywhere from a year to two to apply for and obtain a T visa. The next is the U visa. The U visa is for victims of any crime, a crime against a person. They must be a victim of a serious crime, and it must have occurred in the United States. It requires that the crime be reported to law enforcement and that the law enforcement entities sign off on a certification or form that law enforcement signs off. And this can be the police department, it could be the district attorney's office, it could be any investigative body that is conducting an investigation, the Department of Labor, Department of Justice, any organization that can conduct an investigation is able to sign off on a certification for a victim. However, there is a limit of 10,000 visas, and on an annual basis, there are anywhere from 30 to 40,000 visas that are submitted. And that's why, if you remember earlier, I said it could take over 15 years for a person to get status. Human trafficking is a form of protection under the U visa. And if a person applies for a U visa because they don't qualify for a T visa, it could take anywhere from 10 to 15 years for them to get that status. Right now, there's over 240,000 applications currently pending with USCIS. And so it is really backed up. It is a backlog that's causing a delay in services for victims and survivors of human trafficking and other serious crimes who apply for protection from deportation through the U visa. So it is a broken system that is causing delays for victims and survivors to gain their independence from their abuser because they can't get any status or work permit or ability to stay in the country lawfully until it's processed. Some of the crimes that qualify for the U visa include rape, torture, trafficking, human trafficking, domestic violence, slave trade, felonious assault. There's a series of different crimes that a person could qualify for. If they're a victim of these, we might be able to assist them with applying for those services. And lastly, there's Violence Against Women Act. This is for a person who is married to a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident. We know that in some cases, the spouse is the trafficker. So we want to make sure that we provide protection. And so as OLAP, Office of Legal Access Program Accredited Representatives, we're able to provide legal counsel and legal analysis on their immigration concerns and help them decide what is the best option for them. So what we really do is assess their situation and then provide them with legal guidance on what application, what process is the best for them. And so we really recommend that only a immigration attorney or an Office of Legal Access Program accredited representative provide legal counsel on these issues. As again, I mentioned, I'm not an attorney, but this accreditation allows us to provide this legal counsel on these issues as we are experts in this field. And only a person with this accreditation can do that. So we want to make sure that a person who's getting legal information, legal advice is doing so from a qualified person and not a notario or any other person who is legally not able to. Lastly, I want to be able to share with you the human trafficking hotline. This is the National Human Trafficking Hotline. If you do encounter or are familiar with or want to report a potential human trafficking situation, you can call the 1-800 number, 1-888-3737-888, or you can text 233-733. Again, all this information will be made available to you through Senator Hurtado's office. You can text to this number any information that you have to identify a potential victim of trafficking so that they can get connected to the local agency in their community. These calls, once they reach the hotline, they're rerouted to organizations like the Kings County DA's office, to Centro La Familia, to our collaborative. So if these tips are made, they'll get routed back to us so that we can assess their situation. And then lastly, what can you do as an individual? Become involved by learning, reading, doing your research, know your strengths and limitations to assist the victim. Never, ever, ever, ever rescue a victim yourself. because they could be tied to a criminal organization, and so we don't want you to put yourself at risk. If you encounter a victim or you see someone in need, call 911 immediately if it's an emergency and they're in actual harm's way, or call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at the number provided so that they can make the report, they can take the tip and send it over to the appropriate authorities. Spread the word, volunteer with the local organization like Centro de Familia, raise awareness to social media by sharing verified information, true information, participate in functions, support your local, state, or county initiatives, and like us on Facebook. We are on Facebook, so feel free to like us so that you can help us share information as we post it. And that is it. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we have an opportunity for questions or not, but Senator Hurtado.
Hi, thank you, Mario, for joining us today and for all the work you have done. You guys continue to do with Centro de la Familia Advocacy Services. Next, we will have Kings County District Attorney Keith Fagundes and Julia Patino joining us today.
Well, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us. And I have to say that Mario did an excellent job with that PowerPoint presentation. Quite literally took verbiage from what we normally present and presented it to you folks in a great presentation. So thank you, Mario, for that. In fact, I may even want to reach out to you and see if I could plagiarize your PowerPoint a little bit and use it for our own purposes. It was so excellently done. It was done because it was thoroughly in-depth enough to give the reader and any listener all the tools they need to identify human trafficking. And it underscores the necessity of all of our efforts working on human trafficking. One thing in Mario's presentation that stood out to me was that there are 47 different collaboratives working together against human trafficking in the state of California alone. And that's remarkable because we only have 58 counties total. And when you take a regional unit like this Central Valley unit, then it encompasses more counties, Fresno, Kings, Tulare. And so you start to consolidate county resources in that way and state resources and federal resources because that's what we all operate on. And it's so important that we all take note of this huge issue because human trafficking as a whole does take two forms. In one form, it is the labor trafficking, which we see a lot. And all of those red flags that Mario mentioned should be heeded. If you see somebody who has particular limitations on their ability to move, they don't carry their identification, they are just controlled in a way that isn't normal for our society. You should take note and you should call someone. You should take action. And that is really what we try to present every day is really not only the red flags and everything that Mario presented, but also the call to action. Knowing something and doing nothing about it is perpetuating the problem that we have. And another thing that Mario mentioned that I think is significant in our society is that our criminal organizations that we all know as doing drive-bys and trafficking drugs and doing things that, your auto thefts and all those criminal activities that are for profit for these gangs, none of us like it because it affects us so personally when our car is stolen, when our homes are broken into, when we see drug trafficking on our streets, when our families or friends are affected by the drugs that are pushed. That's offensive to us, and we all take note of it. But if you think about it, a car can only be stolen once. A house can only be broken into once before somebody takes action and puts up more security. A set of drugs can only be sold one time. But when we look at the commercially sexually exploited children and the impacts on our state and our country and the world, that is a resource that is giving to these gangs over and over and over again. And Mario said that. He said it in just that way. And I've probably done more than 50 to 100 different presentations on human trafficking recently. And every single time I try to underscore that is that when it comes to exploiting people's bodies, you not only destroy their bodies, but you destroy their psyches as well. And so our goal with the district attorney's office and our victim witness program is to give people the tools not to be victims, but to be survivors. But they will never have that opportunity to survive if the community doesn't come together and the community doesn't focus on the well-being of women and children and really all people in our community. Because Any gender can be sexually exploited. Any age can be sexually exploited. So it's important to us to really know those red flags, know the signs and symptoms, but also take action. But take action in the appropriate way. As Mario said, never put yourself in any kind of harm's way. But in the same token, we also have to stand up and say no. And so report it to the police. It's better to report and have it documented and have no action taken until it culminates into something that action can be taken. So what I want to do is share my screen for a little bit. And we have Julia Patino here. Before we share the screen, Julia, and go through some PowerPoint slides, do you want to say anything about the victim services that we're providing here in Kings County before we lose the attention of the audience that is here?
Well, I just want to say that I don't know if you're familiar with your victim witness programs in other counties, but here in Kings County, we have a small but growing program, and we provide crime victims of all crimes with services here. And one of the things I want to say is that human trafficking is just one of the crimes that we do serve. They're a very difficult population to work with, and we're learning, and our advocates are continuing to get educated on how to serve these victims. We do refer out to a lot of agencies, such as Central La Femme. I'm sorry, I can't say it. I'm not even going to try. But we do refer out to them, and we do refer to a lot of agencies in Fresno and Tulare County for housing and other things. But I just want to say that those victims are in a lot of need for a lot of services, and we as a community it's really a community's effort to help these people, because we can't do it here alone. So I just want to continue to urge people to, keep your eyes open and watch those individuals, and don't be afraid to get involved. Like Mario said, be careful. Obviously, if you're not familiar and you're not law enforcement, you obviously should call law enforcement, but don't be afraid to get involved and call law enforcement. That's one of the biggest problems, is people see things and they don't report because they don't want to get involved, and the community has to get involved in these cases. And so I'll let Keith start his PowerPoint, and then we'll follow up with a few other a little bit more information later.
Okay, so we're going to go very quickly through some of these slides. And just for fair warning, this is a lengthier presentation that we do locally here in our community. And since Julia has been victim witness coordinator, we have done, upwards of 300 or 400 people gathered together in an auditorium and have walked through these slides. So I will go quickly, because Mario did such a great job at covering the statistics and covering a lot of the things that we like to tell the community as a whole, that I'm going to go very quickly through these slides just for the sake of giving you folks a flavor for what we can offer our communities and what you can be a mouthpiece for out in the community. So I'm going to share the screen, and I will, I think Mario is still on his screen sharing. So let me, okay, I think that should be sharing my screen. So I'm going to start walking through this. As I've said, I'm Keith Fagundes with Julia Patino. Human trafficking, what we do here is we culminate with the old phrase of a nonprofit up in Fresno called Breaking the Chains, because human trafficking really is the modern version of slavery. And you're not only stealing people's bodies, but you're stealing their souls. And every community is different. It affects them. Here in Kings County, we don't necessarily deal with those young children, 30 or 40 in a room. We just don't have that kind of population here. But what we do have are the teenage young ladies from 13 to 16 who are being abducted, taken to other places, put into that particular scenario that they need to do this activity in order to survive. And fear is often used. And we talk about trafficking. We know what trafficking drugs is, right? Moving drugs from one place to another. We know what there is always some particular definition of trafficking. But I think what comes to mind for most of us is the difference between trafficking through a tunnel underground and trafficking guns, which we know of, to smuggling people and to moving people from one place to another. And again, it crosses both lines of sexual trafficking as well as labor trafficking. So again, human smuggling is a lot different than labor trafficking and human trafficking in the sexually exploited children sense. So we want to make a distinction between human smuggling, and we hear of trafficking guns, it's really smuggling guns. We hear of bringing drugs in over the borders, it's really smuggling drugs in. But we sometimes misuse that term. So human trafficking, after 7 years of us being in our community, explaining the difference between, I think our community is aware of that. And with folks like Mario out there doing his presentation, I think people are aware of the difference between human smuggling, moving across borders, versus human trafficking, which is a crime against the person. And we're fortunate here in California. You know, Nancy O'Malley up in Alameda County started this battle many, many years ago, and she brought it to all other 58 counties with her example about the difference between sexually exploited people in general. And we, of course, have focused on children. But our California state legislature has made the laws a lot more stringent and have given us really a whole lot of consequences for folks. And I know it's dwindling here in our society, consequences, but when it comes to sexual trafficking and human trafficking, we still are able to, as a community, take a hard line against it. So with the law, as Mario mentioned, he read to you the federal and the state law. He commented on both of them. There needs to be some form of movement when it comes to human trafficking. No travel or transportation or movement across state or national borders is necessarily needed, although we often think that it is. And that's the difference between smuggling and trafficking. So trafficking can happen within a county, within a city, without ever leaving the borders. And when you offer somebody up for their labor without fair compensation, without the ability for them to have their rights and have their freedoms, you are trafficking another person. We know the pop culture with all the movies out there, human trafficking, traffic. And so you can get a fair assessment of the flavor of what's out there and the abuse that is out there. Although it's sensationalized with Hollywood, it is nevertheless a good way to know that this is in existence. And just because they make Hollywood movies out of it doesn't mean it's not happening in your community. In fact, you should assume the opposite. And there's all these movies out there. But we also have, because it's in movies and Hollywood, we have folks like Jason Timberlake and other celebrities who are standing up against it. And that's good, because we need recognizable folks to stand up and call attention to this. This is a call to action. It is a call to action for you to take action. So what is human trafficking? And in the modern form of slavery is really what it is. It is a serious crime, which means it's a strike here in California, and you could still get extra time for any future crimes that you do. And as Mario said, there needs to be force and fraud and coercion, but there has to be some form of exploitation of a victim. And there's the difference, again, labor and sex trafficking. There's always that distinction, but they're still particularly serious against each victim. So labor trafficking, a group of people locked into their factory and no papers, no cars, no ability to drive away. They're often maybe not legal in the country, and that's why we're grateful for T visas and U visas and the other immigration reprieves that we can give folks who are victims of these crimes. Oftentimes, they're very young people just wanting to survive, and their conditions here are often better than they are in their own country when it comes to labor trafficking. So although they may not come out and think and want to be a victim because they're making more money and sending it back, at the end of the day, their freedoms are not there that they should have in our society. So we take a hard line against it, and I'm proud of that. So labor trafficking, by its barest definition, is simply the act of forcing a person to work for little or no money or for other than a fair wage. And it can come in many forms on labor trafficking: domestic services, garment factories, agriculture areas, restaurant work, construction, nail salons, all of these places where there's volumes and volumes of work. Of course, some entrepreneurs are not going to be fair, and they're going to take advantage of people who need it. But we do take a hard line. In the Bay Area, a jury convicts an owner of a factory for forced labor and harboring. These stories are all over the internet. When we go out to the fields here in our county and in Fresno County, we have a lot of agricultural areas. So we get a lot of folks who you can see it through the labor traffickers are sometimes taken advantage of. So we want to identify those victims and see them. Fortunately, California and the federal government have taken hard lines on federal laws. And as Mario said, in 2000, federal law was passed, and it put very stringent up to 20 years of sentencing on people who do these crimes. And that's good. In California, we have 5 years, 8 years, or 12 years some people can be sentenced to for some of the low-grade types of human trafficking. But for a lot of the serious human trafficking, it could be a 15 to life even. And so when we look at labor trafficking and who are the victims, we often look at, do they get their meal breaks? Are they in a safe and healthy environment? Are they taking action without being punished? Meaning, do they stand up and speak for themselves without being punished in some way by their employer or supervisors? And then are there benefits there if they get injured or become unemployed? And are they receiving their minimum wage and overtime that they're entitled to? And those are our laws, and it's not fair to take advantage of people who are desperate for the money and survival in order for an employer to make more money. So we take a hard line against that. But I think what really shocks our conscience is sex trafficking. And when we look at CSEC, the commercial sexual exploitation of children is what CSEC stands for. It's something that we can all rally against because it's just wrong to take advantage of innocent children. Children who should be playing in the sandbox, children who should be going to school, getting the good education, to give them a platform to thrive in life and then to give back to their communities. We take that away when we allow people to sexually exploit children and other people. And so commercially sexually exploited cases come in many forms, but it's any sexual activity involving a child in exchange for something of value. It could be anything of value. California law, Mario commented on the penal code. I won't read this penal code to you, but it's 8 years, 14 years, or 20 years in prison and a $500,000 fine. So we want to take freedoms away from those who have taken freedoms from others, and we want to fine them and take the money that they've earned over time away from them. There's 15 to life and $500,000 if the offense involves force, fear, fraud, deceit, coercion, violence, duress, menace, and a whole litany of other conduct that is just offensive to our senses. So who are the victims? As Mario said, there's a whole list of vulnerabilities. And in our community, we have found that the 13 to 16-year-olds who are often runaways, who have family problems, maybe broken homes, or maybe they get involved with somebody who's not from the area, who's much older than them, and they just have vulnerabilities in life, any vulnerability. And although none of us really grow up in the idyllic home, we all have particular vulnerabilities, and that's what makes us all potential victims. And that's why we all have to be vigilant and try to stomp that out. Because if we allow the vulnerabilities to perpetuate, they will never go away. So some of the red flags or some of the people who we have seen become victims in our community are often runaways, homeless youth, trouble at home, victims of domestic violence, sexual assault at home, or even outside in the community, and drug addiction. Drug addiction is what we see for all of our social problems and ills these days, right? We see a massive homeless problem, and oftentimes there's mental health and drug abuse mixed in with that. But going with that is also really some sex trafficking that goes on. You'd be surprised, somebody with nothing who is homeless will use the one commodity that they have control over in order to get money to survive, in order to get food to survive. So it's important for us as a community not to let homelessness and drug addiction, mental health, unawareness go undetected and untreated. So addiction is something that you should be looking for, because I do truly believe if we could get to the root of drug addiction in this community and our state and our country, then 80% of our crime would go away. It really would. So we had our own local case here. This individual, we call him like a Romeo pimp. And the reason he's referred to as a Romeo pimp is that this gentleman became the boyfriend. He was a serviceman who came to Lemoore. And after traveling the world, who knows what certain things he was able to access in other countries, but it sparked an interest in him, an unhealthy interest. And he made friends and made up a girlfriend of a very young girl. After he was engaged in sexual intercourse with her, he convinced her to videotape it with him. And the next thing you know, he's convincing her to engage in sexual activities with others, and he would stand in the closet and videotape them. So fortunately, as the Romeo pimp, he was found and he was prosecuted and he was sent to prison for 8 years here. The other case, because who are our victims, is this young lady here. I won't say her name, but she was 17 at the time. And this young lady is smiling in her booking photo because she was somebody who was running a ring of about 3 or 4 younger ladies than her. And she was actually the pimp in this case. And I know we try to get away from the term pimp and John and those terms, but that's what most people are aware of and know. And we try to, they are perpetrators, they are felons, they are criminals, so we should treat them as such. But this is one young lady that we tried as an adult, and we sent her to prison for her actions of ruining the lives of these 4 or 5 other girls. And she was profiting off of their bodies and off of their psyches and off of their ability to provide sexual activities. So the reason I showcase those 2 cases is to tell you that these perpetrators of commercially and sexually exploiting children and other young people, they're hiding in plain sight. They look like everyday people. They can be people in your community that you may be unaware of. They look like everyday people, and they are hiding in plain sight. So you'll want to keep an eye on that. So as I've said, the modern day chains of slavery are human trafficking and sexually exploited children. is certainly at the top of the list there. So as we go through some red flags, if you see a factory or a workplace where the bars are keeping people in rather than keeping people out, as these point inward to the business, that's kind of a red flag. You should report it, because most security fences are put in to keep people out to protect property and not to keep people from getting out. So please pay attention to that. But when we look at labor trafficking, as Mario said, there's a whole bunch of symptoms and signs to look for. But if they owe money to their employer, that's a red flag. They should never owe money to their employer. Their employer pays them the money they deserve, and they are in control of their own money. They don't have their passports. If they're in isolation, they don't have access to communication outside of the circle within which they're working. And all of those same red flags that Mario mentioned are in play here as well, and we cover them. The CSEC, commercially sexually exploited children in our community, they're frequent short-term runaways. Again, some of the terminology is they will call their boyfriend daddy. They will have money and clothes and makeovers without really an explanation of how they afforded it. There's more than one iPhone. It's typical in criminal activities to have a burner phone, as they say. They'll use different lingo, such as the game. When somebody's talking about the game and they have these things that they can't explain, and there's just, a whole different attitude about them, you might want to look at some other activities and report to their parents, or if beyond their parents, report to authorities in some fashion. We found these tattoos and barcodes on some of the young victims that we found, and they become survivors, but they did it by breaking the chains and coming out and speaking out against these tattoos. It's very important to look at these odd tattoos that really just mark property, and no human being should ever be property. Here are some more tattoos, and this is the image that most people see, a bunch of young girls in a room, and that's offensive, but it can often be just one or two girls as well. So we have to take care of that. These statistics are horrendous. There's over 100 to 300,000 children in the U.S. a year are enslaved in human trafficking. In 2015, my idea of human trafficking awareness came to be because I was at a meeting with other district attorneys, and a gentleman came to speak who was there from a 3-letter federal agency who said he was doing an operation overseas in another country. He saw a bunch of American businessmen frequenting this location, and he saw 30 or 40 young children that he identified as being human trafficked at that point, and he called it in so he could take action and save those children. And the powers that be told him no. They told him, no, you're there for a different operation. And I'm not judging that decision because I don't know what that operation was. But he was so offended by it that he started his own private organization to rescue children. And back in 2015, after 3 years of operation, he had saved over 125,000 children. And that's remarkable. So it's hiding in plain sight. If we don't look for it, we'll never find it. But these are the statistics, folks. So what can you do about it? You can do aggressive investigations and prosecutions, which we are. Our California laws allow us to on the local level. We can have awareness and training, which we do, not only in January, which is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, but every day of every month of every year, we are out there, and anytime anybody will listen, we will talk about human trafficking. We go to law enforcement and educate them what to look for, because law enforcement, every one small community is inundated with thousands and thousands of calls every year for service. Sometimes they just can't see what's in plain sight. And then we collaborate. We get together with organizations like Mario's, Julia's organization, local organizations to help people get the T visas, get the U visas, get housing, get out of their situation. And we connect them with resources everywhere that we have in our county and other counties in order to heal, because we also give counseling services too. And we try to identify those counseling services particular to human trafficking and the effects thereof. Because if we do nothing to cure the psyche and to try to give them the tools to overcome their abuse, then they'll never be survivors. And that's the key, is to make people survivors. So that's the end of really what we have to present with the human trafficking and what we do for a PowerPoint. But at the end of the day, it comes down to us and our community. And I'm going to go back to not sharing my screen here if I could figure out how to do that. So there it is. Here you go. So I know that Mario did a great presentation. And I would certainly love to have your PowerPoint and be able to discuss that with you. Julia, did you want to close today and thank all of our viewers?
I did want to just say thank you so much for having us. It's platforms like this that allow us to get the word out, that allow us to educate the community and hopefully prevent this from affecting someone we know. So thank you guys for having us. We really appreciate it today.
Thank you. And so if there are no questions, and we are available here in Kings County, call the DA's office. If you have further questions, need assistance, call any local police agency, and we will certainly respond to any call for service that there is. This is an important topic, and it takes every one of us at the helm driving this ship in order for it to sail smoothly. So thank you again for watching, and we hope that you heed our call to action and do something about human trafficking in our community. So Mario, are you in charge, or do we send this back to Adriana?
I think it goes back, but we're happy to collaborate with you all.
Yeah, that's a fabulous PowerPoint you did too, by the way. It's very thorough, and I could see your immigration expertise came out in there as I was learning a little bit with the immigration slides too. So maybe one day we'll have coffee.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay.